This is the night of release. This is the year of release, the year of Shemitah. So we'd like to share a few thoughts today and tomorrow about what it means to lean into this concept of Shemitah, of release. So I want to begin by sharing a memory with you. From 20 years ago, I was living downtown in New York City with a beautiful partner, a man who was an artist and a healer and had HIV/AIDS. We were as safe as we could. We reduced risk. And every few months, I would go and get tested for HIV. And every time I walked away from that clinic, and at that time, it was about a week to get your results, I heard in my head the music of Yom Kippur. Mi yichyeh u'mi yamut. Who will live and who will die? Not because I was afraid of death necessarily, but because of the uncertainty, because of living with maybe, of not knowing your results, knowing that no matter how safe you might try, life has a way of just showing up. Sometimes great, sometimes not. That maybe, that uncertainty, is where I want to begin tonight. 20 years later, we're all getting tested, all the time. That's Lizzo, I believe, and Heidi Klum. If you Google celebrities getting tested for COVID, slim pickings, FYI. But we know they're doing it, hopefully. I know everybody in this room is, and vaxxed. We're all getting tested all the time. And it brings up a lot. Individually and collectively, this is a moment of being tested. How do we show up for tests? How do we show up to this global test of our generosity and resilience, of our patience, of our kindness, of our safety? This is a global test we're in the middle of. This is a rite of passage. And time will tell, and generations perhaps, how humanity and how this planet will be graded. How each one of us on this night of Yom Kippur, and we were here last year, already with a pandemic, make this a way to pass this test better, or at least show up to this test with more, with better, with tools. Tools that will help us face the unknown, uncertainty, and these tests we're in the middle of. And so I want to share a tool with you tonight, a tool from our tradition, a tool for our toolbox of how to survive and how to thrive. And this tool looks a lot like a fork, that one. The one we all use at least once a day. I know we're beginning to fast tonight, so this is a fork that is about the feast of the senses. This particular fork has 3 teeth, 3 prongs. When the fork showed up on the human table of invention in the Bronze Age, it was only a skewer. And it was a 2-pronged piece for a very long time. I'm told the Italians in the 12th or 13th century really invented pasta. So they figured out you need 3 prongs. Grazie. The British resisted the 3-pronged fork for about 300 years after that. Tools evolve. Tools can be a lot of things. And the tool that I want to share with us tonight, just like the fork or its pitchfork sibling, comes from the ancient human repertoire for survival, for thrival, for how to be adaptive, and how to live well. This tool comes from the folklore of farmers, and it's ancient. And it needs a redo, which is what we're about to do tonight, tomorrow, this coming year. Are you curious about what this tool is?
Yeah.
Excellent. You're going to have to wait. This tool has 3 components to it, like this fork. And every tool begins with a tail. So here's the tail to lead us to this tool. The tail takes us to where a man, an old man, is kneeling on the ground. All around him are the ashes of his burnt city, his destroyed civilization. An old man on the ground, on his knees, in ashes. His forehead is on the ground. His mouth is tasting the soil and the soot of everything he knew that is now over. But his lips begin to move. And his lips begin saying, Ulai yesh tikva. Perhaps is hope. Ulai yesh tikva. That man is Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, some say. And the place is Jerusalem. And this is 3,000 years ago. Jerusalem has just been destroyed and burnt to the ground. There is no more temple. There is no Yom Kippur. There is slavery and exile. There is death and disease. And this old man prophet who has for years said, change your ways so we will not be exiled, is now on his knees in the burning embers of his city, but his lips are still saying, Ulai yesh tikva. We read these words on Tisha B'Av, the fast day that preceded this one. The fast day in which we remember the destruction but commit to rebuilding. Reverend Derek, Naomi, part of our team back here in New York, created once again our Rise from Rubble event for this fast. Back in Jerusalem, I was sitting with some of my teachers, and this line came up. Ulai yesh tikva. Perhaps there is hope. This is the 3-pronged approach. This is the tool that I want us to look at tonight. We'll begin with the first one, ulai, perhaps. Think about this word, perhaps. I know on Facebook there is a maybe. Okay, you're going to show up or not? And that maybe is frowned upon because you're kind of wishy-washy. But I want to give maybe some credit. The word perhaps, like the fork, is from the Middle Ages. It means perchance. It means I don't know. The word maybe, perhaps, ulai, means it isn't about me. There might be other forces here that will change the situation. The word perhaps, maybe, ulai, says, let us decenter the human. Let us not focus on my ego. Maybe there are other ways. Maybe there are unexpected outcomes. Ulai, I don't know. It isn't about me. It is about me and what I know. It isn't about what my civilization know. It isn't about human supremacy. Nature is so much bigger than that. It isn't about male supremacy or white supremacy, our Western civilization that dictates the world's schedule. No, maybe there will be a storm and all our plans will go down the drain. Or a pandemic. Or just a change of mind. Ulai is a way to move from what I know to what might happen. Different perspectives, possibilities, viewpoints, options. Ulai is how we move into what's next and not get stuck in what we know. Ulai is a way to release. And when we move into ulai, which isn't easy because we like to know how things are, then we find the second word, the second prong on our fork. Yesh. Is. Of course I'm disappointed. This room has so many people and so many who couldn't make it today because they're too young or because they're too far. Of course we're disappointed. There's so much I wanted in my life, so much we wanted out of this world, and it isn't what's happening. And I'm the privileged one. But to say yes is to say I'm focusing on what is right now, not on what isn't. And I know that sounds very much like positive psychology. That's a good thing. But this is ancient wisdom. Ulai yesh tikva, a prophet in the suit of civilization says, I'm focusing on what is. He's going to write this book called Lamentations. He will keep waking us up years and generations after his demise to wake up. Yesh, focus on what is, not on what isn't. Because when we do that, we just might stumble onto hope. Tikva. And tikva and hatikva can be hokey and cliche. Hope to see you later. I sign a lot of emails with hope and healing. What is hope? Peter Berger, the sociologist, talks about hope as a sign of transcendence. It's when something beyond human kind of enters our lives, no matter what we believe in. I want to share a couple quotes from contemporary thinkers about what hope is, or might be, for us. Most importantly, hope is not passive. Hope is a choice. Hope is an action. Rebecca Solnit, who's a fantastic thinker and author, says hope locates itself in the premises that we don't know what will happen and that in the spaciousness of uncertainty, exactly where we are right now, the spaciousness of uncertainty is room to act. Hope is an embrace of the unknown and knowable, an alternative to the certainty of both pessimists and optimists. It's important to say what hope is not. It's not the belief that everything was, is, or will be fine. The evidence is all around us of tremendous suffering and tremendous destruction. The hope I'm interested in is about broad perspectives with specific possibilities, ones that invite or demand that we act. Hope is a choice. It doesn't just happen. Reverend Derek taught us on Rosh Hashanah that in order to open new doors, we need new keys. The old keys will not open the new doors. Hope is one of those keys. And I think it's one of these doors that our civilization, our community, our world right now needs to rediscover. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the late chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, who just passed several years ago, wrote a lot about hope. He considers hope to be the most important Jewish virtue. We can talk about that later. One of the most important distinctions I have learned in the course of reflection on Jewish history is the difference between optimism and hope. Optimism is the belief that things will get better. Hope is the belief that together we can make things better. Optimism is a passive virtue, hope an active one. So just think for a moment, where in my life am I activating hope daily? And where am I activating it's not going to turn out well? Hope is an action. So what do those three words have to do with a fork? You might be wondering. These three words, ulai yesh tikva, perhaps is hope, altogether is a single tool. Perhaps a fork, perhaps anything that will help us cultivate reality. And the tool that I'm talking about is as old as the plow and older than the pen. It's a tool that our ancestors who were farmers and who knew how to live with the earth gave us. It's a tool that is sitting dusty in our toolkit, and this year I invite us to dust off and reclaim and reinvent, because it might be critical for our individual and collective survival. That tool is called Shemitah Release. Lishmot is to drop it, to take your clenched fist and open it, to take that which you are holding on greedily and lovingly and drop it. And Shemitah shows up in the Bible. It may have been an older concept. Just like Shabbat, the Sabbath day, every 7 years our farmer ancestors decided everything must stop. The earth must lay fallow. Crop rotation is a global wisdom. If you don't sleep, you do not function, nor does your phone. It's good to recharge. And so the farmers would let the land lie fallow for a full year every 7 years, and the farmers would rest. And the beasts and the animals would eat what's there, and the crops would go wild. And you would trust that there'd be enough yield from what you planted in year 6, and whatever ulai is going to grow, and that neighbors will support each other, and you won't die. You will rediscover rest and trust and hope, and on the 8th year, you will start again. There are the verses from the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, on our screen. 6 years, plow, prune, collect. On the 7th year, Shabbat Shabbaton, the Sabbath of Sabbaths. Unplug, rest, sabbatical, for those of us from academia. Rest. Not just you, everybody. Your immigrants and workers, full-time and part-time. This is the promise of Shemitah. Now, you may look at me and say, that was nice when we were a small agrarian society, but now we're not. How the hell do you make Shemitah happen? And the answer is, it's really tough. In Israel right now, the solutions to make the ancient Shemitah work in a billion-dollar agricultural economy are audacious, brave, and a little ridiculous. The entire land of Israel is being sold every 7 years to somebody who is not Jewish, so that the Jewish state does not work the land and disobey the Torah. Great! We are obeying the halakha. But shouldn't the land rest? Doesn't happen. So Shemitah is on us to reinvent, to reclaim as a fork, as a tool, as a way to cultivate maybe is hope. To release the ways we hold on to what we know and to find new ways of being. This is the gift of Shemitah. And if it isn't going to be the plot of the farmers, it's going to be ours. 7 years ago, we did Shemitah. We focused on digital detox. We called it the year of Fallow Lab, and focused for a full year on like a little less Facebook and a little more FaceTime, the original FaceTime. Here we are now, 7 years later. Shemitah is an invitation for us to reimagine, in the face of the pandemic, home and work, body and mind, better balance. Yes, less screens and more ground. It's a way to think about racial justice and reparations, about the land that we do not own, and to whom it does and to whom it should be belonging. It's about justice in deep ways from the ground up. It's about the land of Israel and the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. Whose land is it anyway? And can Shemitah be a year when we release our hold and find a new way to live on this holy land? And most importantly, Shemitah is about us taking responsibility for this earth that we have not let rest, that does not lie fallow. that our great-grandchildren might not see alive, like Jeremiah. They are going to be on their knees in the suit of a destroyed civilizations because we have not done enough. Shemitah is serious business. In the Mishnah, in one of our ancient texts, here's the warning about what happens if you don't keep Shemitah. There will be exile. There will be complete destruction of civilization. Shemitah is up there with the 3 top prohibitions: bloodshed, murdering innocents, sexual abuse of ourselves and of others, and idol worship, meaning not seeing the divine in everybody and everything around us. For our ancient ancestors, Shemitah was one of the top 4 things to look out for as a virtue, and we don't even know what it is. The problem with Shemitah is not what it is, but what it isn't, and what we need to do about it. So this year, the tool that I want to invite us to think about, this 3-pronged fork, is a way to release. Later this evening, Reverend Derek and myself will be presenting 4 conversations by 4 world leaders about different ways of honoring Shemitah. It is the first of 12 monthly conversations with many partners to reimagine Shemitah in our life, from our bodies to the earth, all forms of justice. We will be inviting you to be part of these conversations and actions so that we can all be here next year and say, I've done something. Because hope is an action, not just something to wait for. And Shemitah says, drop it. But what are you going to do about it? So before I end, here's my invitation for you. On this night of Kippur and tomorrow, I want to invite us to think about 2 things. What will I release in my own life? What is something I'm holding on to right now that I can release to live a better life this year? What's my personal Shemitah? Will I release some of my digital addiction? Some of my fears? Will I release my expectation that there'll be no risk and all will be healthy? Will I risk my release of, you know what your work is. What will I release this year in my own personal life? And the next question is, what will I do this year to let Mother Earth rest a little more? What can I do for the sake of this planet? Because if every single one of us actually really does something daily, there might just be a difference. Ulai yesh tikva. Maybe, perhaps, but not if we just swipe left and forget about what is this whole story about. To be a Jew, says Rabbi Sachs, is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. To be an agent of hope in a world threatened by despair. Every ritual, every deed, every syllable of the Jewish story is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. The whole of Judaism is a set of laws and narratives designed to create in people, families, communities, and a nation habits that defeat despair. Ulai yesh tikva. So on this night, I want to offer you this fork with these 3 prongs, a tool for your toolkit of human thrival and human survival, how to cope and how to hope, how to release what isn't helping you be who you need to be, and how to step up individual and collective actions for this earth. We'll be doing it this year. This beautiful visionary magazine that Sarah and our team worked so hard on has many invitations for reflection, including a thought about a fork and how a fork can be your way to be environmentally conscious. Look for the fork. and look for your own way of release and renew. This is our year of release. Perhaps there's hope.